Welcome to Brain Lady Speaks with Julie Anderson on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network. Julie Brain Lady Anderson is considered to be one of the nation's top experts on the brain-personality connection. She has been inspiring her audiences to fire up their brains and ignite positive changes in their relationships. And now she is here to bring that knowledge to you. The information she shares will help those who hear it to accelerate their success in life and business through the discovery of their natural gifts and maximizing their brain power. When you learn to tap into the potential of your natural gifts and the power of the brain-mind connection, there is no limit to what you can accomplish. Today and every Wednesday on Brain Lady Speaks, you'll explore the latest findings to see how they have practical application in your life. And now, get ready to join Julie Anderson on Brain Lady Speaks on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network. Take it away, Julie.
Good morning. Good morning. We are here on the Brain Lady Speaks radio show on the Lessons in Joyful Living Network. This is yours truly, Julie Brain Lady Anderson, and I am so pleased to have you here with me today. I am looking out the window at the beautiful sunshine. Just amazing day here in Northern California, and I'm sure it is beautiful wherever you're at. And even if the weather isn't so beautiful or your view out the window isn't so beautiful, I'm sure you can think positive and find something beautiful to admire amidst the chaos that may actually exist. You know, that's part of what keeps our brain happy, is just really always focusing on the positive, seeing the silver lining. And when you can actually train your brain to do this, you know, you can step in and you can just constantly see the positive, constantly see the beauty around you and admire the little things that are beautiful in the world around us. You know, it was kind of funny. Yesterday, I was driving up this long blacktop driveway. You know, blacktop, it's just not really the prettiest thing, right? It wasn't concrete. It was this blacktop, you know, the freeway kind of blacktop. And as I'm driving up the driveway, I noticed on the side of the road there were these two daffodils, these two little opportunistic daffodils that had actually come up through the blacktop about a foot in on the driveway. And I thought, how amazing. To me, it was just this beautiful thing that had popped up amidst this, you know, kind of ugly blacktop. And those are the things that we can do in our life when we really takes the chance to just stop and see the beauty around us amidst whatever chaos that may exist. And the more you do it, the more your brain sees it, the more your brain catches it. So it's actually a method in training your brain. So that's a little brain tip there. First thing on the show, I want to remind everyone, well, first, thank you for listening. I appreciate that time is very valuable, and I try to bring content that makes your time here on the show worth it, makes it something that you can gain either information to use in your life, business, and relationships, or inspiration. That's kind of what we're going to be focusing on today, is inspiration, because guess what? March is Women in History Month. Did you know that? When I coach or consult with my clients, my business clients, one of the things that I tell them to do, and this is something that I was trained to do. I didn't amazingly come up with this idea, right? My brain's not that great. But look at things that are going on the calendar, and then kind of frame your blogs, your radio show, your newsletters, your articles that you're writing, kind of utilize those as idea springs for different marketing things. Because these are things, you know, you're going to see all month long. You're going to be seeing things pop up on Facebook or Twitter that are connected to women in history. I guarantee it. You know, they're going to be there because it's something that is on everyone's mind. So jump on that bandwagon, use it to help to monetize your business, to help to give you ideas and thoughts on how you can bring your message out to a wider audience. There's also a couple other fun things. So I'm just going to share these with you for a little marketing tip here on my Wednesday morning. There are a few other great things that take place in the month of March, and I'm going to be taking advantage of them. So today is actually Read Across America Day. So you might include that in your posts or in your articles or whatever you're doing today. Read across America. So that is something. I have a homeschooling section of people that follow me, and that's going to be something that I'm obviously going to be really highlighting for that and for the parents that follow me. It's encourage reading. Great to expand your knowledge base. The 4th, so this Friday, is Employee Appreciation Day. So if you're a business owner, or here's the great thing. If you're in marketing, if you are a company whose client base is business owners, great promo. Start writing about it now. So maybe you're a send out cards representative, right? Do blogs, do posts today that are going to highlight that, okay, Friday's Employee Appreciation Day, and hey, what's a great way to show appreciation for your employee? Send them a great card, right? If you're a florist, send them flowers, whatever the case may be. So, make good use of Friday. Next Tuesday, so the 8th, March 8th is International Women's Day. So if women are your client base, make good use of that. Let's see, what else do we have here? I thought this one was fun. March 14th is Pie Day. Now, the first time I said this, I have a little business women's group that I run on the first Tuesday of every month, and I said this to all of them, and everybody was like, "Ooh, we get to go eat pie." And I'm like, "Well, that's what I first thought. Pie Day. That's where everybody's brain goes. Great blueberry pie or blackberry or apple or whatever." Well, actually, because it is March 14th, which means it is 3-14. It is actually Pi Day, as in P-I, as in mathematical calculations, Pi Day. So that was kind of fun. So if you have, I don't know, if you're a teacher, you can make good use of that. See what else. You've got St. Patrick's Day on the 17th. The 19th. The 19th is the International Day of Happiness. So that on my show on the 16th, I'll be highlighting that. That a lot of my blogs that week are going to be about happiness, because I'm all about the positive. I'm all about being happy. So I'm going to make good use of Saturday the 19th. Plan something, plan a call, if you're in business, plan something that's going to support that theme. Let's see, then we've got the first day of spring on the 20th. This one's going to be fun, and it's going to be super fun. The next one's going to be super fun because guess what? It falls on a Wednesday. So on Wednesday the 23rd, so that's the show towards the end of the month, Wednesday the 23rd is National Puppy Day. National Puppy Day. How great is that? I love that. I'm a dog lover, right? Well, what's even better than that is that I just last week met a dynamic entrepreneurial woman who, what does she do in her philanthropy or her give back or volunteer work that she does is she rescues dogs. So how great. Who do you think I'm going to try to get on that show? Haven't confirmed it yet, but that's what I'm working on. So you got to be sure to tie in on National Puppy Day with us here on the Brain Lady Speaks radio show. So there's just some marketing ideas, little marketing tips that you might incorporate in your own business. Again, sometimes when we've been blogging for years or we've been tweeting for years or making posts for years, we kind of stop and go, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? How am I going to spice this up? This is a great way to spice it up. Always check your calendar. Always look at your calendar and find out what's going on in that month that you might be able to wrap in to your marketing message. And sometimes it's just a fun wrap in. It may be a stretch, but still, it's going to be more often looked at because it's going to kind of tie into things that people might be thinking about during that individual month. So keep that in mind. Little business tip there. Didn't necessarily plan on going into all that, but there you have it. There you have it. All right. So what is the theme for the month of March? So, we run themes. January was mindset. February was relationships. Why was February relationships? Because I was monopolizing on February being when Valentine's Day is. So everybody's thinking about love and relationships. So see, you got to work on that. So this month, it is going to be all about stepping into your power and rocking your natural gifts. It's going to be a lot about how to utilize your brain gifts to truly step into your own and utilize those gifts, monopolize on them, make them work for you. They're the things that come easy for us, and when we highlight them, our life goes so much better. So we're going to be doing a lot of talk in the next couple of weeks, the next couple of shows on the brain personality connection and your brain quadrant dominance. And we're going to wrap all of that into how that creates this amazing personality profile. Now, in the last couple of months, last month, we already talked about the introversion, extroversion levels of people, the difference between the male, female brain, the communication styles, and those all frame a portion of your personality, right? They're part of that brain personality connection. But next week and the week following, we're going to be talking about the most fascinating, I think, coming out of the field of neuroscience, and that is your energy expenditure advantage. Okay, sounds a little complicated and technical, but it is going to explain so much about your personality. It's going to explain so much about why things come easy and why things are difficult. Okay. Now I'm going to leave you hanging with that because guess what? We're not talking about that one today. That is the next couple of weeks. We're going to be dealing with right brain, left brain, front brain, back brain, all of that type of stuff in the next 2 calls. But today, what we're going to focus on, starting off with that Women in History Month, is I'm going to share with you some of what I like to call the pillars of the past. So what are some great women from history that utilized their gifts, that stepped into their power and rocked those gifts, brought them to the world in such an amazing way? And because of that, because they were confident in what they had, they either changed people's lives through their volunteer work or accomplished amazing things and gave us inspiration to follow. So that's how we're going to start out this month. We're going to be talking about those amazing women in history, those pillars from the past that can help to inspire you to step into your power and rock your natural gifts. Now, because it's Women in History Month, we're going to be highlighting the women. I don't want to be sexist here. We're not excluding the great, amazing men in the past. You know, there's some wonderful, wonderful men with wonderful brains. Albert Einstein, boy, if I could go back in time, I would go back in time and visit him and pick his brain, right? Amazing stuff. But we're going to focus on the women in history because it is Women in History Month. So come back and join us after the break for some amazing inspirational stories.
With her thorough understanding of brain chemistry, Julie Anderson provides you with tools and processes that will change your life in a positive way. Julie uniquely blends science and psychology when she shares her knowledge and information with businesses, entrepreneurs, women's groups, and families to improve workplace morale and productivity, parents creating dynamic relationships with their children, and women achieving more in life and business. Julie Anderson will be right back with Brain Lady Speaks on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
It is estimated that over 100 million Americans suffer from chronic pain. Some of that pain centralizes in the joints, and joint pain can be agonizing. Harvard Medical School says the culprits behind joint pain tend to be osteoarthritis, old injuries, repetitive or overly forceful movements during sports or work, posture problems, aging, and inactivity. Ignoring the discomfort will not make it disappear. And they say that limiting your movements can weaken muscles, compounding joint trouble, and affect your posture, which can cause further problems. On the other hand, the correct set of exercises can be a long-standing way to subdue hip, knee, ankle, or shoulder pain. Keep active and learn the correct exercises to strengthen key supportive muscles and flexibility to put joint pain behind you. I'm Annette Hammond.
Being in a bad marriage or relationship can make your life miserable. But staying in a bad marriage or relationship is not only miserable, but it should be unacceptable. Join relationship coach Lindsay Ellison each week for her new show, Start Over, Find Happiness, where she gives expert advice on all things divorce and breaking up. Dating after divorce, good sex, bad sex, the importance of self-love, setting boundaries, how to find love again, loving toxic partners, as well as Lindsay's own journey of divorce and rediscovery that has inspired millions of women around the world. You can also sign up for her coaching program, Thrive, which helps anyone navigate through the disparity of breaking up and starting a new journey. Join Lindsay Ellison every Monday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network. Go to lindsayellison.com for more information. Welcome back to Brain Lady Speaks on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network. By including the latest scientific research on the brain-personality connection, Julie Brain Lady Anderson provides her clients with the all-important why behind what people do and how they think. The information she shares will help those who hear to accelerate their success in life and business through the discovery of their natural gifts and maximizing their brain power. Here again is your host, Julie Anderson, with Brain Lady Speaks on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network.
All right. Welcome back. Welcome back. Okay. So we are talking about today, in honor of Women in History Month, some great women in history. Now, when you start doing research, there's so many great people who have made amazing contributions to technology, to humanity, to the field of medicine, and they span across the sexes, obviously. So again, I'm not trying to be sexist here, but we're just focusing on the women this time, and maybe we'll do a show in the future about some of the great researchers. Boy, I got a few of them out there, like I said, the brain researchers that I would just love to talk to. It'd be amazing. But when you look, focusing on women, when you look in the past, there are so many that you could talk about. You can talk about women who made their mark as business women early in history, like Mary Goddard, who back in 1775 became the first woman publisher in America. Now, back in that time period, being a woman in business, being an entrepreneur, if you were female, was just completely unheard of. So clearly she saw her natural gifts and she swam upstream, fought against the status quo, and created a great business. Anne Green was another woman who did the same thing, 1767. So back then, she made history when she became the first American woman to run a print shop, to actually open a business and, do business, have your male counterparts that were in competition with you. And she was successful. And she made history because she was the first woman to really step into that place. But again, I appreciate these stories because it's the example of women recognizing that they had gifts or they had these dreams, and despite their adversity, they stepped in and grabbed the bull by the horns, and in the end made it easier for women as the years went by. Elizabeth Blackwell was another great woman in history. She was in 1849, she became the first woman to graduate from a university with a medical degree. Women were not in the medical field prior to that outside of nursing, outside of being the helper or the support. And she, went against the grain, went against adversity. I mean, can you just imagine the hallway talk in that university, But yeah, she was the first one to graduate with a medical degree. So there's just some great stories out there. I'm just going to highlight some of my favorite, and I'm going to start by going into one that is kind of, I don't know, I call it kind of dear to my heart because of what I do in my life and in my volunteer work. I volunteer with Bible education for the deaf, and I learned, my history goes back, I was about 15 years old, and we had a deaf gentleman who became great friends of the family, and I found American Sign Language. Well, what he actually taught me was C-sign, signed exact English, but it was sign language, right? Talking with your hands. I found it poetic. I found it absolutely beautiful, fell in love with the language, fell in love with the culture. And the more and more that I learned about the adversity that the deaf in general had gone through in life and, throughout the generations, it just became even more dear to me and even more something that I wanted to be involved in. So I wound up being a professional interpreter, and I freelanced it. I've always had my entrepreneurial business but I did some freelance interpreting for many, many years. Every now and then, occasionally when I get a call from a favorite client, I will still do some interpreting today. But I've got a little bit of arthritis creeping up in my right hand, which is not really conducive for sign language, but it is a beautiful language. And for me, because that culture and that history is dear to my heart, and I'm so close to that community, probably one of my most favorite women in history has to be Helen Keller. Now, most of you may have already thought, oh, that's the direction she's going, right? Helen Keller, because so many people know that story. It was made very famous by the movie, and I wish I could remember the name of the movie. I should have looked that up before the show. But the movie where I think there were a couple of them actually made in Hollywood over the years, probably more than a couple. And they were, highlighted her story of how she struggled to learn how to communicate. But as I'm going to share this story, you'll see what really impresses me is what happens after the movie ends. Because what they always highlight, what Hollywood for the most part always really focused on, was that struggle from, her getting sick and becoming deaf and blind to actually learning to communicate. And those years, because those were such traumatic years. But this woman went on to accomplish absolutely amazing things. So if you don't know much about her, what her basic story was, how it all began, she was born on June 27th, 1880. So we're going back, I call it the dark ages for the deaf. It really honestly was. When you look at deaf history, they were suppressed so greatly because it was felt that by the general populace that if you were deaf, there was a mental disorder. So you were thought to be, have a mental disability that would not allow you to accomplish great things. As a matter of fact, many deaf, because even the parents themselves did not really know how to deal with the situation. There were just a lot of home signs. And yes, there was a language of the deaf, but if the parents were hearing, and if you saw the movie or if you know the story of Helen Keller, the parents get frustrated with that lack of being able to communicate. So a lot of times deaf were actually institutionalized. They were put in insane asylums. As a matter of fact, the sign for school for the deaf, the hand sign for school for the deaf, actually stems from the sign for institution, because it is a generational thing. And way back when, that's where they went to school. A lot of times were in institutions. So it's a very sad history, and I could spend a whole couple shows on that clearly. And maybe one day we will go into that. But what was interesting, or what happened with Helen Keller, is when she was 19 months old, she became very ill. So she wasn't born deaf or blind. She got sick. And this is actually very typical. There are not that many that are born or where it's a genetic deafness. By far, the majority of it has to do with some kind of an illness or accident or something along that line. But at 19 months old, she became ill. They're not sure if it was meningitis or scarlet fever, but that resulted in her losing her sight and losing her hearing. So then you see the story about how the struggle. She was blessed in the fact that she was raised in a family where there was some money. So she wasn't raised in a poor family. She was raised in a family where her father was a good businessman and he had some money. And so he was able to, as a lot of people know in the story, hire this other woman to come in and to try to teach her how to communicate. And through the struggles and the frustration on both sides, because imagine how Helen Keller felt. She was going through her life. Everything was dark and there was no sound. So the only real senses that she could use were her smelling, her sense of smell, her taste, and her touch. So she ran around touching everything. Well, then she had this amazing breakthrough where she learned sign language. She learned tactile language. And guess what that did? She went off the charts at this point, because she could have gone on and just stayed at home and lived. I mean, good grief. She had all these adversities that she was facing, and she could have stayed home. but she didn't. In 1904, she entered Radcliffe College. She graduated from that college, becoming the first deaf-blind person to earn a Bachelor of Arts degree. This was in the early 1900s. From here, she became, get this, a world-famous speaker and author. So she traveled, and clearly with an interpreter, carried an amazing message to people. She became an advocate for people with disabilities. She traveled all over many countries, and she helped to establish the Helen Keller International Organization for Research in Vision, Health, and Nutrition, and helped to establish the American Civil Liberties Union. I bet you didn't know all that, right? Like I said, the story always stops at the end of the movie where she amazingly learns how to learn sign language, how to communicate. But instead of just being happy in her life with that, she stepped into her power of inspiration. She did not allow her disability to stop her. She did not allow the frustration that could have caused. She did travel with an interpreter. She had a full-time interpreter that traveled with her. So that made, that helped out in different situations. But she became world famous in the speaking world, right? Sharing this message. She used her experience to become an advocate and help to establish organizations that would support other individuals with disabilities. So talk about a woman who was inspirational in stepping to her power and rocking her natural gifts. She did not allow this sad thing that happened to her when she was 19 months old to stop her from achieving incredible greatness throughout her life and inspiring tremendous amounts of people. So I love that. I think she is just an amazing pillar. She could have had this, like I said, this comfortable life, but she went on to do truly great things. She just laughed at that challenge. She was like, no biggie, no biggie. I'll just keep going. I'll just find a way to move. So that's the first person that I wanted to highlight. That's the first person I want to share from you. Truly someone who had gifts, had talents, was willing to step into them and take them to the world, rock them to the world. Okay, so join me after break, and we're going to go on to the next amazing woman in history.
With her thorough understanding of brain chemistry, Julie Anderson provides you with tools and processes that will change your life in a positive way. Julie uniquely blends science and psychology when she shares her knowledge and information with businesses, entrepreneurs, women's groups, and families to improve workplace morale and productivity, parents creating dynamic relationships with their children, and women achieving more in life and business. Julie Anderson will be right back with Brain Lady Speaks on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network.
We often ask, is that all there is? Why is this happening to me? Why am I always broke? How am I going to survive this mess? Then join Dr. Geraldine Tegeloff for Nature Spirit Speak, 7 p.m. Tuesday evenings on TogiNet.com. Geraldine is a metaphysician, nature intuitive, and prosperity coach who shares with you how she went from totally broke to living what she would call her perfectly prosperous life. Through the combination of a wealth of metaphysical knowledge and her amazing ability as an intuitive, Geraldine brings to you the secrets of her magical journey of healing emotionally, spiritually, and financially. As with the ancient seers and master teachers, Geraldine has a unique gift of being able to connect to the simple yet profound messages brought to us by Mother Nature, and happily shares these through today's note to self on her webpage, naturespiritspeak.com. If you need help with your journey, why not connect with Geraldine during her show, Nature Spirit Speak, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Central on TogiNet.com.
From quantum physics to metaphysics, cryptozoology to conspiracy theory, energy healing to angels, on Into the Light Paranormal Radio, we're here to tell you that just because you haven't experienced it doesn't mean it's not real. Each episode, Kitty Janice, Kimberly Rinaldi, and their guests have one goal, and that's to bring another conversation and another bit of consciousness into the light. Into the Light Paranormal Radio, Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network. Welcome back to Brain Lady Speaks on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network. By including the latest scientific research on the brain-personality connection, Julie Brain Lady Anderson provides her clients with the all-important why behind what people do and how they think. The information she shares will help those who hear to accelerate their success in life and business through the discovery of their natural gifts and maximizing their brain power. Here again is your host, Julie Anderson, with Brain Lady Speaks on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Okay, so I hope that last story about Helen Keller was inspirational to you. I hope you learned something a little bit about how, just overcome adversity and just step into, no matter what you've got coming up against you, step into your power and rock your natural gifts, as I like to say. Like I said, it's all connected to that brain personality connection, and sometimes we sadly suppress that to be accepted in society, which she could have definitely done. And so could have another woman that I wanted to highlight that is inspirational to me, and that's Maya Angelou. Pardon me. So she was born in 1928 in Missouri, and a lot of people recognize her as being one of the most renowned and influential voices of our time, having died, I believe, just I think it was 2014. So she actually has been on the stage here fairly recently. But I think what is so impressive about her is, again, she used her natural gifts to bring inspiration to the world and to overcome adversity. So here she was, obviously growing up as an African American, growing up in a time of a lot of racial prejudice and a lot of suppression, and she lived through a lot of that, and she brought her stories, the stories of what she saw going on around her, by her poetry, she was actually a producer, a filmmaker. So when you look at her bio, she had over 50 honorary doctorate degrees. So she was Dr. Maya Angelou, and she became, of course, the poet. So she sent a lot of her message and inspiration through poetry, a memorist. So she brought a lot of that information from history forward, an educator, a dramatist, a producer, an actress, historian, filmmaker, and civil rights activist. So again, here was a woman who recognized that she had a natural gift, a gift of words. Words can be incredibly powerful and have an incredibly large impact on the brain. So to motivate people and to get people to think. And she used this despite everything that she obviously must have had to come up against, doing all of this and breaking these boundaries during some very hostile times in history. And 50 honorary doctorate degrees. That's amazing. That's amazing. 50. When I first found that out, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. 50 honorary doctorate degrees. That's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive. Another person that is from history, woman from history, and you're probably not going to recognize this woman's name unless you are a techie, someone who was really into the early development of computers. But again, she was breaking grounds as a woman. Pardon me. Allergies getting to me here. As a woman, being aggressive in her business life in a very male-dominated world, in a very male-dominated time. Her name is, where did we put? I want to make sure that I pronounce it correctly. Hamilton. So she in 1960, she was 24, and she went to Earlham College of Mathematics, Mrs. Hamilton. And she graduated and then took a position at MIT. So in 1960, this was a woman going into MIT. Not something that is, happened very often back there. MIT is pretty difficult to get into. But Margaret Hamilton, she got into MIT in 1960. And the reason why she did this was actually to support her husband while he was attending law school. Now, she was working at MIT, and just a year after that, Margaret was presented with the opportunity to be a part of MIT's instrumentation laboratory. Now, guess what they were working on in 1961? Remember that decade. That was the decade of space travel. So this MIT at that point was working on the developing of software for Apollo 11. So she had already accomplished a lot by simply being able to work at MIT and having this amazing mathematics degree. But now she had the ability to influence one of the greatest moments in history by working on the software that was for the Apollo 11 lunar trip there. Now, she dominated this area of technology and engineering. Or she didn't dominate it, men dominated it, and she took and made her stamp and had to fight against swim upstream. And she was actually the forerunner of this technology, of the software that was used on the Apollo command module. So as this project unfolded, it became clear that this software needed to be, computers, they had to work on this, obviously. And she did a lot of the programming for that. So they didn't realize, who knows now? Most of the time you would probably never know that it was a woman, Margaret Hamilton, that was the one who did a lot of this designing of these amazing onboard computers that took care of a lot of the little details of that particular mission. So according to a magazine, it was because of Hamilton's software that the computer worked and that the computer assisted in that landing. So amazing woman, one that you just don't hear about. But again, incredibly inspirational in the sense that she was comfortable in fighting upstream and stepping into her natural gifts, because her natural gifts were that clearly of a mathematician. And it wasn't exactly a field that a woman was to step into. So I thought she was always a very interesting person as I studied her growing up. Next, I want to talk about Audrey Hepburn. Okay, you're maybe thinking, okay, wait a minute, Audrey Hepburn was just an actress, But actually, a lot of actors and actresses have a huge other side to them. There are ones that have amazing degrees and amazing college experience, and then they go into the acting field. And not that the acting field is an easy field. I don't know. I've never been there, but I would imagine that it was, it's quite competitive and difficult. But there's a few things that impressed me about Audrey Hepburn. Of course, I think she's an incredibly classy lady. And she always carried that class, I felt, in a lot of the films that she did. She has a lot of great quotes, a lot of inspirational quotes that lend themselves to that topic of stepping into your power and rocking your natural gifts, that topic of owning who you are and recognizing it and being confident in it. I have on my wall several quotes from her that just, they keep me inspired, and I love that. I love that. She did a lot of great movies, obviously. However, she only really spent about 15 years in the acting field. She moved on to do something much more amazing, and that was her work with UNICEF. So after her, 15 or so years in the field, she could have kept going in her acting career. She could have continued. But from 1967, after those 15 years in films, she only acted occasionally, and she spent most of her time with her family and working with UNICEF. She was appointed as a special ambassador to UNICEF, and she became actively involved in campaigns to improve conditions for children all around the world. Here's a quote something that she said when she visited an Ethiopian camp for children in 1988, and she was just so struck to the heart by the poverty and starvation that she said. And her quote, what she said was, "I have a broken heart. I feel desperate. I can't stand the idea that 2 million people are in imminent danger of starving to death. Many of them children, not because there isn't tons of food sitting on the northern port of Shoa." So when someone takes their position, it's impressive to me when someone takes their position of popularity to step out of the limelight, but use their influence to do something positive. I think that's pretty cool. I think that's powerful. And I think that's something that, Audrey Hepburn did. She said, "I saw tiny mountain communities, slums, and shanty towns receive water systems for the first time by some miracle, and that miracle was UNICEF." So she believed very much in her work that she was doing there. But again, it's something that you can do that she did that I felt was very inspirational. She didn't stay in her comfortable little position, making films, having fun in the entertainment community, but she stepped out of the box and she went forward and she did some amazing things. I thought she's very impressive. And like I said, it just exuded class to me. So she's someone that was truly inspirational. We are going to be cutting out to break, but I still have a couple of amazing people that I wanted to talk about. Again, there's so many. One of the people that I talk about when I talk about the pillars of the past, I talk about Amelia Earhart. She was a great, great woman who, again, broke the mold of what was a male-dominated field in setting the women's altitude record, first to fly solo across the United States, the east to the west coast. Did you know she authored 2 books? And she set the speed limit, the world speed limit for women in the air. Just crazy things. She attended both Harvard and Columbia University. I mean, she did a lot of great things. So a lot of great people. When we come back, I'm going to talk about Harriet Tubman a little bit. I think she's someone who always deserves a respectful nod from history because of the things that she did and the way that she educated herself and became a business owner. Some great thoughts and stories there. And again, there's probably a lot of amazing people that you would think about. But join me when we come back to talk a little bit more about amazing women in history.
With her thorough understanding of brain chemistry, Julie Anderson provides you with tools and processes that will change your life in a positive way. Julie uniquely blends science and psychology when she shares her knowledge and information with businesses, entrepreneurs, women's groups, and families to improve workplace morale and productivity, parents creating dynamic relationships with their children, and women achieving more in life and business. Julie Anderson will be right back with Brain Lady Speaks on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network.
Cats in U.S. households than any other pet. Most allurophiles or cat owners know that unlike dogs, taking Kitty for a ride in the car isn't any fun. I mean, you never see a cat hanging its head out the window, enjoying the breeze. Today's domestic cat is descended from a small Mideastern wildcat. A group of kittens is called a Kindle, and a group of adult cats is a clouder. What's the word for those dust balls composed entirely of cat hair? Fluffernuggins. Personally, I like pigs better than either cats or dogs. Dogs are subservient and look up to man. Cats are aloof and look down on man. A pig, however, will look you in the eye and see as equal. I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
Welcome back to Brain Lady Speaks on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network. By including the latest scientific research on the brain-personality connection, Julie Brain Lady Anderson provides her clients with the all-important why behind what people do and how they think. The information she shares will help those who hear to accelerate their success in life and business through the discovery of their natural gifts and maximizing their brain power. Here again is your host, Julie Anderson, with Brain Lady Speaks on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network.
Little extra music intro there. All righty, we are back. This is our last segment of the Brain Lady Speaks radio show for Wednesday, March 2nd. Welcome back with me. We are talking today about all of the inspirational women in history. Not all of them, but some of the ones that just stood out to me as being just amazing, ones that we can learn so much from. And before we went to break, I mentioned that we were going to be talking about Harriet Tubman. And I find so many of these stories just fascinating because of the different directions that these women could have gone in versus where they wound up going, what life choices they made to create, just have incredible impact, positive impact on other people's lives. So looking at Harriet Tubman, her story is very interesting for a number of reasons. She was born in 1820, and she was, of course, a slave, although she shouldn't have been, which is pretty interesting. I'll get into that. But as a child, she received a head injury when an angry overseer, it says, took a 2-pound weight and hit her in the head with it. So this actually caused her a lifelong health issue. She had a battle with sleeping, and she battled with seizures because of this brain injury that she had. She actually had a TBI, a traumatic brain injury. And once she became older and in her teens, she became a really, really good hard worker. Being raised as a slave, she had to perform extremely hard work. And she became, they said, unusual strength is how it was that she developed. And she then was hired out because of this. She was hired out to other plantation owners and allowed to do, or done work at the other plantation. And what this would allow her to do now, she wasn't allowed to go to school, which was something that was fairly common back in that day. And she, despite this, she learned a lot on her own, and she had just an amazing amount of natural intelligence. Anyway, so she was hired out to work on neighboring farms, and this gave her a little bit of an independence. And it also gave her the opportunity to earn small amounts of money. Now, when I say small amounts of money, you have to imagine it was incredibly small amounts of money. Some of the type of works that she did was very physical work, cutting wood, hauling logs. So she was physically an impressive woman that way. Now, women, it's kind of interesting because when a master back in that time would hire out slaves, the slave would pay the master part of what they earned on these other plantations. For male slaves, the cost was $100 a year. $100 a year. For a female, it was $60 a year. Now, in time, Harriet had earned enough money to not only repay her master the $60, but also to earn and buy her own pair of oxen. So she was a budding entrepreneur very early in her life. Okay. So she started developing a little business and started working that way. Now, she married at age 24. She married John Tubman, and John Tubman was actually a free man. He was not a slave, and that gave her a little bit of extra flexibility, if you will, for whatever that was worth during that time, right? A little bit of extra flexibility is really nothing. But she wanted to trace her roots. So with some of the money that she had saved, she actually hired a lawyer. So this is at 24. She hired a lawyer who found out that her mother should have been freed when she was 45. Her mom should have been freed at the age of 45, which meant that Harriet should have been a free woman. So now here she is, knowing that this entire horrible life that she had had up to that point in time, being a slave, should have never happened, because even by the laws of that time, she was a free woman. She should have been a free woman. Now, this made her even more passionate about being free. So even though her husband was a free man, she was still considered a slave. So in 1949, she and two of her brothers escaped with the aid of the Underground Railroad. So she got out of this situation, but she was still considered a fugitive slave. Now, she used some of the money that she had earned and that she had saved over time to purchase property. So she now, again, she's got her oxen. She had bought her oxen. She had this entrepreneurial spirit. She could have tried to find now that she's escaped from her slavery, she could have tried to find a little quiet area of the world, of the States, to live in, and just, not do anything to be recognized or to be noticed. And yet that isn't what she did. She wanted to reunite with her husband that she had, because when she separated from him, obviously, when she escaped through the Underground Railroad. So she disguised herself as a man. She went back south to find her husband, only to find out that, guess what? He had remarried. He had found somebody else, and this had to have frustrated her tremendously. But it didn't stop her desire to change the lives of other people. She wanted to help other people gain freedom. So she became what was then called a conductor on the Underground Railroad, helping other slaves escape to freedom. For 10 years, she made over 20 trips to help free others. And again, she was obviously a very intelligent woman, so that aided her in doing what she did. And wherever she went, she would always work so that she could help to sustain the slaves that set her free, or that she helped to set free. So she not only helped to get them out of that situation, but she also worked hard to build a seed money pouch, so to speak, for the slaves that she helped to set free. Truly a giving woman, and a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Not tenacious, but determined. She was just determined to do whatever she could. Now, what wound up happening is this started getting noticed clearly by individuals who did not, who wanted to keep the slaves, who wanted to keep things the status quo. And so at that time, there was a $40,000 bounty that was placed on her head. $40,000. And think about that. Again, we're going back to the mid-1800s. That was a lot of money to be placed on an individual's head as a bounty. And yet that's how much of a threat she was to slave owners. And she actually, in 1857, she took probably what was her greatest mission, I would imagine, in that she went back and she freed her aged parents. And remember, this was her mom, should have never even been, should have been released as a slave at age 45. So this was something that she was obviously very passionate about, and it probably brought her a great deal of joy to be able to do that. Now, when the Civil War ended, or started rather, I should say, when the Civil War started, she joined. So she became part of the military, again, something that women didn't really do, and acted as a spy, a scout, a nurse, and a cook. So she just kept going with all of her desire to help others and her trying to help stop this atrocity that was taking place. When the war ended, she worked hard to establish school for those freed slaves. So she just had, sadly on March 10th, 1913, she died of pneumonia. So she really had an amazing, amazing life. And there's so much more to her story, so much more amazing things that she did. But I think I like it because not only is it inspirational, but here's a woman who wasn't allowed to have an education, and she could have made so many different choices throughout her life. Even once she escaped as a slave, she could have made so many different choices, and yet she constantly did this amazing work. Definitely a pillar from the past. And, there's so many lessons that you can learn. like I said, that I think the greatest takeaway is that giving back, the fact that she never forgot to give back, even once she had the ability to completely separate herself from that horrible situation, she kept risking her life and going back into that situation to continue to help other people. So great story, great woman of history. And there are so many others, obviously astounding women from the past, astounding men from the past. They leave remarkable imprints on the places and people that they encounter, and they leave their mark and sometimes even change the course of history, which I think that is something that Harriet Tubman did, and that, Helen Keller did, and all of these different women. And there's so many more stories. So the message is identify where your natural strengths are. Step into that power and rock them. And we're going to talk about in the upcoming shows, we're going to talk about how to identify that, how to really get into that brain-personality connection, your natural brain wiring. How do you identify where your natural gifts are? Because sometimes we get really confused as to where we're naturally gifted at and how to, what am I really good at? I kind of can do a little bit of everything, but what is my natural gifted, my natural DNA wiring, and how do I step into that, own it, rock it, take it to the world with amazing missions or amazing business or whatever it is that you want to do. So we're going to deal a lot with that this month. And of course, have that fun puppy dog show or the fun show with the entrepreneur who does the puppy work. So if you want, that is just about it for us today. Thank you for tying in. Again, I appreciate so much, value everyone's time that they spend with me on Wednesday mornings. And if you want to connect with me more, please do reach out. Ideas for a show, new neuroscience that you have discovered, things you want me to share. Maybe it's an individual you want me to interview. Reach out to me. Send me a message at info at brainladyspeaker.com. And if you want, there's so much more information on the Your Best Mind online website. There's a link there on the Brain Lady Speaks radio show page on the Lessons in Joyful Living Network. You can follow those links and you can go investigate some of the extra information. Lots of free downloads too. I'm keeping up for a while the link to the Create Love on Purpose that we discussed last week, so you can connect with them. Again, thank you so very much for visiting me on this show. Keep in touch. Reach out to me. Let's continue to enjoy this wonderful journey into the brain as we go through the month of March. Having some fun with helping people to identify their natural gifts and truly becoming someone inspirational like the women we talked about today. So bye-bye for now. Have a great week. Signing off, Julie, Brain Lady Anderson.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Brain Lady Speaks with Julie Anderson. Julie Brain Lady Anderson is considered to be one of the nation's top experts on the brain-personality connection.